Thank you for joining us for the Lab and Lab Order Module Help video. There are two ways the Lab module may be used to record the labs ordered. First, by printing requisition forms and record the results of those labs, as well as entering the labs ordered to print a requisition form and test results coming back from the lab imported into ehrTHOMAS through the Genius interface. Contact Genius Solutions to use Genius interface to receive lab results. A list of all lab orders for the patient will show when you click the Labs button. You can search for a lab by accession ID. Click Show Signed Lab Orders checkbox to see all signed labs for the patient. Click the Show Voided Lab Orders checkbox to see all the voided labs. A visual representation of each lab status at the top left corner of each lab order will appear. The blue icon indicates the lab was ordered. The red icon indicates it is pending. Yellow indicates it's partially completed. A green icon with a check mark indicates it's final. The green icon with a pen and check mark means it is signed. And the red cancellation symbol means the order is voided. Click the Add button and the Create New Lab Requisition screen will pop up. Fill out the requisition with info necessary. Select the diagnosis codes from the DX1, 2, 3, and 4 drop-down box to indicate the diagnosis codes for the lab requisition. The diagnosis will default from the encounter in which the lab is created. Click the Provider List drop-down box to select the provider that ordered the lab. Enter the search criteria within the search field to search for a lab. Click the Search Filter drop-down box to search by description or code. Click the Sort button to sort results in ascending or descending order. Lab categories are located on the screen's left side. Suggested codes will populate under the header when lab tests are used with similar diagnoses added to other patients' charts. All codes will display all of the available lab tests that can be ordered for the patient. Single-click on the lab test to add it to the selected test area. Indicate a specific diagnosis code by clicking the Diagnosis checkbox. By default, all the diagnosis checkboxes are checked off. The specific diagnosis for the lab will not show up on the requisition form, but it will show up on your patient note if designed specifically to display the information. By default, the selected lab test will be addressed to the lab that was indicated. If a particular test must go to a different lab, click the Lab Search and click the appropriate lab. Once all labs have been selected, click Next. Your newly ordered lab will appear at the bottom of the lab ordered list. The lab order will appear on the patient's task list until it is signed. Highlight the lab order and click the Edit button. The Edit screen will appear. The date and time will populate when the lab is selected. Click the calendar to change it. Select the provider from the Order Doctor drop-down box. Select the ehrTHOMAS user to be attached to the order from the Technician drop-down. Click the Referring Doctor Search button to search the referring physician to attach to this lab. Identify where the lab cost is being sent. Select the appropriate option from the Bill Type drop-down box. Enter the specimen identification number within the Specimen ID field. Enter the specimen source within the Specimen Source field. Enter the specimen's condition within the Specimen Condition field. Enter or select the date within the Collected field. Click the Fasting checkbox to indicate the patient was fasting when the specimen was collected. Enter or select a date within the Target field to indicate when the specimen should be tested. Click on the DX1 through DX4 search button to review and/or change the diagnosis codes on the lab requisition. Select the appropriate status from the Order Status drop-down box. Enter additional comments within the Comments to Lab field. Under the Order Test header will be all the lab tests that are associated with the lab. Each lab can be edited and the results can be attached and removed. Click on Print Rec to print a lab requisition. The program will bring up the lab requisition screen, which will allow you to review it before printing. Click the Print button to print the order. Add another test to the order by clicking the Add Test button, which will bring up the lab test list. At the bottom of the screen, you can search by descriptions or code. Click the Sort button to sort the search results in ascending or descending order. Click the Show Inactive checkbox to see any inactive lab tests. Double-click the appropriate test, or click the test and click on Add. This will add a test under the Order Test header on the Lab Order Edit screen. The left side of each test gives you the ability to edit or add additional information. Edit the information about the lab test. Click the lab test name. Click the test search icon to change the test to a different one. Enter the date of when the lab was reported. Click the lab to change the lab you want the patient to go to. Select the appropriate status from the Test Status drop-down. Enter in specific notes for this lab test. They will not show up on the lab requisition sheet or the patient note. Click on the DX1 through DX4 drop-down to review and/or change the diagnosis codes. Enter in the lab's accession ID. If there is a lab result that did not get attached to the lab test, click the Add a Result button under the lab name, which will bring up the lab result list. At the bottom of the screen, you can search by description or code. Click the Sort button to sort the results in ascending or descending order. Click the Show Inactive checkbox to see any inactive lab results. Double-click the appropriate result or click the result and then click on Add to add the result to a lab test. Click the Delete button under the test name to remove the test from the lab order. Click Yes to remove the test or No to keep the test. Click the Attach File button to add an attachment to the lab test, which will bring up the lab's test attachment list. This area only houses files associated with the lab test. You can add a file from anywhere by clicking on Add, or you can scan in a new file by clicking on Scan. Once the file has been attached, a green checkbox will appear on the upper left corner. If you are not using the Genius interface to import lab results, you can manually record them. Each result has its own line. Clicking on the Medline Plus button on the results will pull up the Medline Plus website showing information regarding that result. Enter the lab result next to the result name. Clicking the number icon will bring up the number input screen. If the results are not within normal limits, ehrTHOMAS will automatically flag the result. The drop-down result will show if it's abnormally high or low. Abnormal test results will automatically append the patient's clinical alert the next time the patient's chart is open. Activating the system setting Abnormal Lab Patient Reminder will put the abnormal lab information into the patient's clinical remark field. Activating the system setting Abnormal Lab Patient Alert will not add patient's abnormal alerts to the clinical alert or clinical remarks. Click the Add Comment button to add in additional comments. A text box will appear under the lab results. A green checkbox will appear at the top left corner, indicating that there is information in the result comments area. If the patient refused getting a lab test result, click the Refuse button. The Refuse checkbox will be automatically checked. Click on the Reason Code button and choose a reason from the list. A refusal code must be selected before you can click Save. The result line will be grayed out and no information can be added to the test result. If a result was added in error, you can remove the result by clicking the Delete button. Each time a user opens the Lab Order Edit screen, the system will track the date and time. See the list of all the users and the timestamp of when the user accessed the lab by clicking the Reviews button. When the lab order has been completed and the test results are added, it is best practice to have the provider review the lab results and sign off on the lab order. Change the order status in the Lab Order Edit screen from the Order to Sign. It will prompt you to input the provider's PIN, and by clicking Save, it will sign it off. If you are not the provider, Genius recommends that the order status is changed from Order to Final, indicating that the lab needs to be reviewed and signed by provider. Use the gizmos to review all of the lab orders in the final status. This will quickly allow the provider to review and sign each order. From the lab order list, click History to access the patient's results history. As results are recorded into the system, they will be charted on a graph. The result units will always be on the y-axis, while the date will always be on the x-axis. On the left side, select which lab results you would like to view. Selected results will be highlighted in a light blue. To deselect a measurement, click the measurement again. The legend on the right denotes the lab result color. Depending on what you are charting, the lab results will show up on the chart. If there are a lot of data points, there will be a sliding bar along the x-axis. Move the slide bar from left to right to showcase a certain date range. Click Close on the history screen to go back to the lab order list. If you need additional help or have further questions, please call the Genius Solutions ehrTHOMAS support line at 586-751-9080, option 7. Thank you.